Hey everyone, this is Game Ranker, and I'm back with another Samurai Warriors character ranking video. Sorry this one took a little longer than it was supposed to, got caught up with a bunch of personal life shit. But that's not what's important. What's important is, how do your guys' opinions differ from mine? So before I give today's characters their rankings, remember to check the links in the description to straw poll. I have a poll for each character I rank where you can give them your own ranking. So far, only one of the characters has gotten enough votes one way or another to give a proper sample size, and the results were rather interesting. It appears the community seems to like Kenshin Tachibana even more than I do, and give her a much higher ranking on average, with the highest number of votes for a single score going towards ranking her an S-tier character. These results were quite impressive to me, so I'm gonna bump her up 1 point to the score one category higher than what she's at, moving her from B+ to A-. If you think I did any of your other favorite characters dirty, make sure to vote in those polls. Without any further ado, let's get right back into ranking these characters. The first Samurai Warriors came out all the way back in 2004. I know, feel old yet? That's like 16, 17 years ago. It was a success and people wanted more, so Koei, being Koei, provided more, a lot more, and the series is still going strong to this day. There's another major release just around the corner, and Samurai Warriors 5 is doing something no other Samurai Warriors game has done. They are completely overhauling the game, revamping its entire cast of characters, removing many of the series staples, including the poster boy Yukimura Sanada. Many will be returning in Samurai Warriors 5, of course, and many more of the familiar faces might be coming back at a later date, maybe with DLC or in future games. But it just dawned on me that this is kind of a big occasion. Unlike Dynasty Warriors, which has reinvented itself multiple times for better or for worse over the course of its run, Samurai Warriors has remained consistent. It's had the same cast of characters since 2004, up until its last major release, Samurai Warriors 4-2, back in like 2016, 2017 or something. For that whole time, for 4 main games and several spin-offs and crossovers, Koei have kept the same cast of characters and built on it, adding new characters, sometimes temporarily taking some out, but we've gotten to know and get used to the cast of Samurai Warriors. Even in terms of their gameplay mechanics, they've remained relatively consistent for more than 15 years now. But now, for the first time in over 15 years, we're gonna have to say goodbye to this cast of characters, at least for now. But if Samurai Warriors 5 is a success, maybe forever. At least this cast of characters as we know it now. And that's both exciting and sad. I'm gonna miss a lot of these faces until they make their return. So before they make their exit, I want to take some time to look at each and every member of the Samurai Warriors cast, evaluate how fun they were to play as, who had the best design, the best story, etc. All of this is completely subjective, of course. I'm only going to be ranking them based on my opinion alone, but I'm thinking I might open up a poll or something to you guys watching this, so that you can get your opinion on who is S tier and who is trash tier. So what are the metrics that I judge a character by then? Well, first off, there's their gameplay. How good does it feel to play that character, and how powerful are they? Do they have any exploits or hacks with their gameplay mechanic? Next, I'm going to be judging their story and characterization. Do they have a compelling story that is told for them? How is it told across all of the games in the series? Do they have a likable personality or memorable and hilarious cutscenes? If a character has all of this going for them, I might choose to play them even if they're not that strong mechanically. Finally, design. How cool is their hair and their armor and their weapon and their general look? Do they have a cool voice actor or anything like that going for them? For each character, I'm going to rate these 3 fields on a tier list, from D tier being the lowest, going up through C, B, A, and then finally S tier being the highest. And then once I've given each character a score in these 3 fields, I'll average that score and that'll be their final rating. But this is going to be a little more than just ranking characters on a tier list. This is going to be something of a farewell ceremony. So we're going to talk about the character's history, their most memorable moments in the series, changes to their designs and their movesets between games, and how much I'll miss them. Now I will be ranking the characters on a standard tier list. It's got D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, and S tier. But I've added plus and minuses to B and A tier, just because I feel like a lot of characters are going to end up here. And I feel like it's worth distinguishing the solid A's from the light A's, you know what I mean? Also, I made an I don't know tier for the characters from Spirit of Sanada, because I never played that game. And I will be ranking the characters in a completely random order. Oh, also, I'll do my best to pronounce their names, but I don't speak Japanese. I'm an English-speaking layman, amateur weeb, so don't expect perfect pronunciation, but I will try my best. Alrighty then, it's time to talk about today's first character, and it is Toyohisa Shimazu.
高橋常雲とはどのような人物なのですか？
忠義に厚く壮烈な戦いぶりは九州一。奴相手の博打ほど楽しいものはない。
叔父上がそんな風に認める高橋常雲か。叔父上、俺も連れて行ってください。叔父上に教わった戦で俺も強くなりたい。
がむしゃらに戦って強くはなれんぞ、ひよっこ。お前の戦はこの程度か。本当に強くなりたければ好敵手を作れ。
Toyohisa is one of the freshest faces in Samurai Warriors, only making his debut in Samurai Warriors 4. To be honest, I'm surprised it took him so long to be added to the game, or should I say to become a unique playable character. Even when Toyohisa was just a generic officer in Samurai Warriors 2, he actually had a decent amount of dialogue and characterization and a role to play in the story. In Samurai Warriors 4, he's got really big, earnest, wholesome, eager, shonen protagonist kind of energy. His teacher-student dynamic that he has with Yoshihiro Shimazu reminds me a lot of relationships like Deku and All Might from My Hero Academia, or Naruto and Jiraiya, and other classic standard shonen sensei relationships that we see in anime and manga. We'll talk more about that dynamic when it comes time to talk about his story and characterization. For now, let's talk about how he uses that really over-the-top big poleaxe of his. So like I said, Toyohisa is new to Samurai Warriors 4, and because of this, honestly, there isn't that much to talk about in terms of his gameplay mechanics. Because to be honest, there isn't much of a difference in terms of gameplay between any two of the characters in this game, for most of the cast. In Samurai Warriors 2, there's really only a few categories for characters. There's the overpowered characters, the underpowered characters, and then the vast majority of them fall in the middle. Basically just average, unremarkable, super powerful, especially when compared to the characters of previous games, but nothing to make them especially good or bad in this game. And that big middle camp where most of the characters lie is exactly where Toyohisa fits. He has good normal and charge attacks, he's great at clearing big crowds of enemies, but to be honest, who isn't good at doing that in Samurai Warriors 4? His special move increases his attack but decreases his defense. It can be worth using only right before you Musho or enter rage mode or enable some other kind of invulnerability, but it's a bit needlessly risky for not that much reward, so it's not really worth using unless you have a form of those invulnerabilities on hand. He gets access to the unlimited spirit and invulnerability active skills very early on in Samurai Warriors 4 too. Now to be clear, every single character in the game can get access to these skills on the skill tree eventually, but it's nice to get them early on. So Toyohisa is solid, he feels good to play, there just isn't anything broken or OP that you can abuse when you play him, so he just feels like a standard character. He hasn't got anything special that would make me want to pick him when playing this game's hardest content. Like, if I want to reach floor 100 on survival mode, I won't be picking Toyohisa for that task. He's solid, but nothing really special, so he is solid though. His melee attacks have great reach, he's got a good Muso finisher, Spirit Rage finisher, so in the end I'll say that he's just a tiny bit above average, but Honestly, I'm probably being pretty generous here. Regardless, I'll give him a B+ in terms of his gameplay score. Now, let's talk about Toyohisa Shonen and his story and characterization. Toyohisa is kind of like one of the most generic anime protagonists I've ever seen. He ticks a lot of the boxes, but he doesn't ascend to being like a really awesome, legendary anime protagonist like Yusuke Urameshi or Edward Elric. He's more like a generic shonen anime protagonist from some short-lived anime or manga that's too clearly trying to rip off one of the big three. He's loud, stupid, a goofball, but kind and earnest and wholesome. I gotta be honest, I find him really annoying, and also pretty lackluster. He's another supporting character in Samurai Warriors 4 whose life and story revolve entirely around other, better, and more interesting characters. In Samurai Warriors 4, he exists mostly just to try and emulate and surpass Yoshihiro, whereas in Samurai Warriors 4-2, his whole existence is dependent on his rivalry with Naomasa Lee. Wait, is it Naomasa Lee? Naomasa Ie? I don't know. That guy. Yoshihiro is an interesting character. Even Naomasa is an interesting character. They both have their own things going on, their own life that exists separate of other characters, whereas I don't really feel like I can say the same thing about Toyohisa. I don't think there really is much going on in that thick head of his. He's another character in Samurai Warriors 4 who basically feels like he doesn't exist on his own. Like, I can't think of any cutscenes or dialogue or characterization where it's just Toyohisa on his own, thinking, reflecting, growing. He has to be supporting or alongside another character to have any relevant place in this story. He doesn't really have anything to do when there's nobody else around. And on top of all of that, he's just kind of annoying, to be honest. A lot of the times when he's talking, I really just wish he would shut his big dumb mouth. I'm sorry, I know that's mean, but sorry, that's how I feel. So Toyohisa gets a D in story and characterization ranking. I know it's pretty harsh to be that mean to this cute young boy, but that's just how it is. Speaking about this cute young man, let's talk about Toyohisa's design. Toyohisa basically looks like a baby Yoshihiro. He wears a similar set of armor, but a bit more lightweight. He uses a giant poleaxe, which is fairly close to the giant warhammer that Yoshihiro uses. All this derivative design might sound like a negative, but even I have to admit that Toyohisa is kind of adorable in a weird way. Like, they really strongly convey how much Toyohisa looks up to Yoshihiro. So yeah, I actually really liked the design of Toyohisa. Not just because it shows his relationship with Yoshihiro at a glance, but because despite the fact that it's very over-the-top and anime looking, the design actually looks and feels pretty period appropriate and looks cool. It's not too overstated or over the top. And that's something I really can't say for most new characters in Samurai Warriors 4. He's got this look of being brave and strong, but also soft and caring. Similar to what we see with some anime characters like Deku from My Hero or Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. So yeah, I think his design is cool, and maybe my favorite of all of the new characters only introduced in Samurai Warriors 4. But I don't quite love it enough to make it an S-tier character design, so I'll go ahead and give him an A+ in character design. Toyohisa was a pretty cool part, but not an essential part of the cast by any means. I honestly can't think of a most memorable scene with him or anything like that, except maybe when Genshio's husband Spartan kicked him in the face. That was pretty fun, I guess. I did like having him as an option to play, but you could easily make a Samurai Warriors game without him, and it honestly wouldn't have much of a negative effect on the game. Obviously he's not back in Samurai Warriors 5 because we're not gonna get to the Kyushu part of the story yet in that game. But if the series went on overhauling and revamping the cast, I would be totally fine if they never added Toyohisa again, even though I do actually enjoy playing and having him around in Samurai Warriors 4. So let's go ahead and give him his final score then. In terms of gameplay and power level, Toyohisa scored a B+. Story and characterization, Toyohisa gets a D. And in design/cool factor, Toyohisa gets an A+. And all of this gives him a final score of B. He's a pretty cool but also pretty uninteresting character, so this is going to be one of my briefest coverages of any of the characters in the cast. So it's time to move on to someone more interesting. Our next character is Kenshin Uesugi.
The plan is all set. Come, Nemesis.
Kenshin is one of the original characters from the original Samurai Warriors all the way back in 2004. I didn't see him until much later, but something always really stood out to me about Kenshin. There's something about Kenshin that has always immediately screamed both, don't fuck with this guy, and he's probably also not very fun to hang out with. He's just a very stern, mean, staunch, straight and uptight kind of looking guy. And he takes any opportunity he can to talk about just how much he really loves war and death, and it's like, geez dude, calm down. But anyway, since his design stands out so much to me, I'm going to talk about that first. His intimidating and non-friendly demeanor is really sold very well by his character design. For one, now I don't know this as a fact, but he looks like he's the single tallest character in the game, and he just kind of stands over and imposes over all the other characters in the cast. Or maybe it's an optical illusion, maybe he just looks bigger because he's dressed entirely in white, I don't know. He's wrapped up in white cloth, kinda looking like a monk or maybe even a little bit like a mummy. Either way, at a glance it gives him an almost supernatural looking appearance. And that paired with his really weird looking sword, he almost looks like it's from another world entirely. Which is fitting since you were told that Kenshin is thought to be the embodiment of the Japanese god of war Bishamonten. So overall, I really love his design in Samurai Warriors 1, 2, and 3 because across all of the first 3 games his design is pretty much the same. There's some minor adjustments here and there, but nothing too consequential. However, I really dislike his Samurai Warriors 4 design. The big European king style crown just looks kinda stupid to me. And his outfit and robes are now adorned with a whole bunch of little pointless bells and whistles and extra detail that I don't think his character design needs, and it looks kind of silly. To be honest, I had to really think long and hard about what rating do I give Kenshin for his character design, because his character design in the first 3 games is easily S tier for me. It's one of the strongest designs in the whole series. But his design in Samurai Warriors 4 looks pretty fucking stupid and would get much lower of a rating from me. But in the end, I decided not to penalize his character design ranking much for it, because I think with some minor adjustments, mainly just getting rid of the over-the-top crown and all the bells and whistles, his character design would look completely fine in Samurai Warriors 4. So in the end, despite having a bad modern appearance in the newest game, I'm gonna give Kenshin an S tier in character design. He's one of the coolest, but also strangest and most unconventional looking characters in the cast, and he really stands out for that reason, while still fitting in terms of aesthetic and period appropriateness. But now it's time to see if Kenshin, the supposed god of war, lives up to his name in his gameplay mechanics and power level. Because Kenshin has been around since the very beginning of the series and never not been in one of the games, he's seen a fair bit of change over the years. But across all the games, Kenshin generally feels a little bit awkward and clunky to play. As he's performing combos, his feet are planted very firmly to the ground, meaning he doesn't move forward much with each of his attack animations. So it's pretty easy to have enemies accidentally slip out of your reach, or have your attacks not reach as far as you think they should. In Samurai Warriors 1 and Samurai Warriors 2, his attacks are quite slow. Enemies can go from taking hits to blocking you mid-combo, because some of your mid-combo attacks have such a big wind-up and there isn't any way to boost attack speed in these games. So a lot of the times it feels hard to kinda keep momentum going for you in a fight. His Musho attack is kind of a below average crowd clear move, and because its swings are quite slow and it sends enemies flying, you can't actually consistently combo into it. Hell, in Samurai Warriors 1, you can't even get the Musou to hit a single enemy more than like 3 or 4 times. And all of these flaws are true for Kenshin across all the games except maybe Samurai Warriors 4. where you can boost his attack speed with a weapon stat, and his base attack speed isn't that bad either. And overall, they just smoothed him out a lot in Samurai Warriors 4. So far it sounds pretty bad for Kenshin, right? Well, Kenshin actually has some really powerful tricks up his sleeve to make up for his weaknesses. One of those tricks in Samurai Warriors 1 is his charge attack. It's a powerful ranged magic AoE blast that breaks guards, deals pretty nice damage, and sends enemies flying. It isn't quite as OP as it might sound at first because it doesn't build up your Muso bar at all, but still it's a really nice tool to have. Samurai Warriors 1 has probably the most aggressive and threatening enemies of the series, so when there is a lot of them around, it's really good to be able to just stand at a distance and spam this pretty safely so that you can thin the herd. Unfortunately, it knocks enemies down and sends them flying all over the place, so you can't combo off of this move, but still it's one of the best attacks in Samurai Warriors 1. Samurai Warriors 1 is also the one and only game that Kenshin is not a normal attack type character, because combo types were not a thing in Samurai Warriors 1 yet. All characters in Samurai Warriors 1 are charge type characters, and Kenshin's charge combo moves are all pretty strong crowd clearing attacks, especially his free square triangle. They do all suffer from the same slow wind up and stiff animations, and there isn't any special attacks in Samurai Warriors 1. So in Samurai Warriors 1, I'd probably give him something like a B+ in gameplay. He's got pretty high tier crowd clear, but he's a bit below average when it comes to dealing with enemy officers. And he has an OP cheese move to top it all off. But still, his weaknesses are quite profound and make him feel a bit awkward to play. In Samurai Warriors 2, different combo types are introduced, and Kenshin is one of the characters to be changed to a normal attack type character. So this means he gets a whole bunch of new moves, although some of which are just the extended charge combo strings from Samurai Warriors 1 repurposed into new moves. His kit still suffers from the slow attack speed and stiff animation, and it even seems to stand out even more to me in Samurai Warriors 2, because that game's AI likes to block a lot more. His Muso is pretty much exactly the same, except it doesn't knock enemies away now, so it's way easier to get the whole thing hitting one target, but it's not especially more powerful. He gets two special moves that aren't exactly anything special. One of them summons a bigger magical clone of himself. It's basically just a fancy looking way of simply increasing his damage and range, and has kind of weird and awkward properties. For example, when your clone hits something right after you, it knocks them up, so it basically means you can't do a combo reset or extension. The extra damage is quite nice though, and it seems to make you extra effective against reserve captains and defense captains, which is nice I guess. His other special move is a short-ranged, delayed AoE explosion. It's fine I guess, I mean it stuns and I think it breaks guard as well. I say I think because I barely use it. It's just a bit awkward and not all that powerful. So you hear all of this and it sounds like Kenshin's not very good in Samurai Warriors 2, right? But there's one major change they made to him that honestly feels like an oversight. It's so unbalanced and overpowered, I can't believe he has this move in this game. And that is his straight charge attack, the ranged AoE blast. Well, it doesn't work the same way it did in Samurai Warriors 1. If you are surrounded by lots of enemies, including troops and officers in this game, forget every other move. Just spam his base charge ability. It sends a magical orb circling around him, dealing really nice damage, breaking guard, knocking enemies away. It has a really short wind-up animation, so short that you can basically just sit there and spam it and enemies cannot hit you. And even hyper and super hyper enemies are stunned by it, so it's really just an unbeatably good tool in this game. It's a rather slow way of killing big health pool enemies, so if you are in a hurry to move from one objective to another, that's basically the only weakness of this move, is that it's a slow but sure way of dealing with any enemy in this game. But overall, this ability, which you start with right from the get-go, is almost enough to make Kenshin an S-tier character in Samurai Warriors 2. But Kenshin still has some pretty profound weaknesses in Samurai Warriors 2. Despite being a normal type character, he's really not good at getting off really long combos, and enemy officers will block and counter your attacks very often because of how slow they are. So in Samurai Warriors 2, I'd probably give him like an A+ in gameplay. I never played Samurai Warriors 3, so I don't know if Kenshin has changed much there, and if he's as good as he is in Samurai Warriors 2 or not. So So let's just move on to Samurai Warriors 4. In Samurai Warriors 4, Kenshin feels pretty much exactly average. He's an average character. He no longer stands out as having an especially strong crowd clear because every character has a really good crowd clear thanks to hyper attacks in Samurai Warriors 4. And because his base charge move is gone, he no longer has that OP cheese option. He's kept that special move that makes a big powerful clone of himself, but to be honest, it feels pretty pointless. Honestly, I can't really tell the difference between how much damage I'm dealing with it on or with it off, and, you know, the slight increase in melee attack range isn't really important when you can just use hyper attacks. Basically, in Samurai Warriors 4, he's middle of the pack. He's fine, but nothing special. Most of his weaknesses are kind of fixed, but he doesn't have any strengths that stand out. So he gets a B in Samurai Warriors 4 for gameplay. Alright, with all of that, we can finally give him his final score for gameplay across the entire series, and that's going to be an A-. Alright, let's talk about whether or not Kenshin was a good character with a good story now. Kenshin is a book that you can pretty safely judge by its cover. In terms of his personality and characterization, he's as much of a hard ass as you probably would think just by looking at him. He's a classic honor-bound warrior, but also a skilled tactician and charismatic leader, and like I previously mentioned, this guy just absolutely loves battle and war. He is constantly invoking the god of war, Bishamonten, and he has a few lines about how he only exists for war and battle, and he barely ever shows even a shred of emotion that isn't the desire to fuck your shit up. And even that is delivered in a kinda cold and emotionless way. Like, he's gonna fuck your shit up, but it isn't anything personal. In fact, you should probably be honored that the great Kenshin sees your shit as worthy of being fucked up. The only time he really ever does show some kindness and respect is to his eternal nemesis, Shingen Takeda. Kenshin and Shingen have a weird rivalry friendship thing going on. It almost always ends in Kenshin defeating Shingen, but respecting him so much that he spares his life, or even gives control of Japan over to him. Apart from that alternate ending in Samurai Warriors 1, where he slaughters the whole Takeda and Sanada clan, Shingen included. But, you know, he was just in a bad mood that day. To be honest, Shingen and Kenshin's rivalry is kinda weirdly low-key adorable. You know, as long as you don't think too much about all the lives that must have been lost in these guys' conflicts, all for the sake of an elaborate bromance. However, I have to say that in every Samurai Warriors game I have played, he feels a lot more like a minor character than he should be. This guy is referred to as the god of war, and historically Kenshin Uesugi was a very powerful and significant figure, dealing devastating defeats to the likes of Nobunaga Oda, Shingen Takeda, and more. But the Samurai Warriors games never put a whole lot of focus on him, so I do really like Kenshin, but I've always wanted just a bit more out of his character. We know that he is in fact in Samurai Warriors 5, so I'm quite interested to see what they do with his character. Seems like he might just be a very minor side character again, which would be unfortunate, but hey, maybe they'll do something more. So anyway, I give his characterization and story a A+ rating. So let's tally up Kenshin's final score. He got an A- in gameplay and power level. In story and characterization, he got an A+, and in design and cool factor, he got an S, leaving him with a final score of A+. The next character we're talking about is Ranmaru Mori.
Has been enchanted by the demon. Nobunaga is an intriguing foe.
Is that all? He is the one who could rule this land. It is odd, but I am sure of it.
Then fight him, Ranmaru. Fight now, and show the demon your power.
Ranmaru made his debut in Samurai Warriors 1, and honestly this little old game from 2004 is probably where Ranmaru plays his most prominent role. Although my first exposure to Ranmaru was through Warriors Orochi. When I fought him on the battlefield, I thought to myself, wow, that's a really cool looking female fighter, and ooh, them legs. Then I found out he's a dude, and nothing changed still, them legs. But in all seriousness, Ranmaru's design is very attention grabbing, so let's talk about that first. I really like Ranmaru's character design. I don't know if it's progressive or problematic, or if they flanderize Ranmaru a bit with the whole historical thing of Ranmaru often being mistaken for an attractive woman, and the fact that they play up a kind of sexual tension between Ranmaru and Nobunaga. I'm not sure how I really feel about all that, knowing what I know about Ranmaru Mori historically. But anyway, at a glance, you can both easily mistake Ranmaru for being a woman, which I did, but you can also see that he is actually a man. But with his design, Ranmaru could easily be either of these things and it would make sense. And I like that he can look like this without any character in the game story mistaking his gender or making any weird sexist or transphobic comments. He just looks like this and the rest of the game world gets on with it, and I appreciate that. The game also doesn't make any of these kinds of comments implicitly through the design. Far too often in your run-of-the-mill shitty anime, manga, or Japanese video games, we see a portrayal of a boy or a man looking like a girl or a woman, or vice versa, and when we do, it often just boils down to nothing but crass fetish bait. Now don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for crass fetish bait, but I personally don't think that Dynasty or Samurai Warriors is the place for that. Like I already said in my video talking about the female character designs in Warriors games, it irritates me when in a game that is otherwise not a vehicle for crass fetishy fan service or sexual content, that it becomes that anytime a female character is on screen, even though it doesn't make sense in context, and even though none of the characters react appropriately to that. So I appreciate that Ranmaru is designed to look badass, confident, and attractive, but in a pretty practical and normal way. He might be showing some leg, that's pretty common for samurai armor. He wears purple, which you might say is some kind of feminine signaling through color, but it's also just the color of the Oda clan which he serves. So anyway, I appreciate that they have a really feminine looking male character, but they don't be all creepy and weird about it. And outside of that, Ranmaru just looks super cool. His big ass sword, and his long hair, and his feminine features, his fierce, determined look. He just looks really awesome. His design really hasn't changed very much in all four of the games, and I think they all look pretty much equally good. I honestly can't really pick a favorite. I'd probably say his Samurai Warriors 2 design personally, but I think that's just biased because that's the game I've played the most. Anyway, Ranmaru gets the easiest S tier in character design for me. He's maybe my favorite looking character in the whole cast. Anyway, let's talk about how Ranmaru plays. I have always gravitated towards playing Ranmaru because I love his character design so much, in spite of the weaknesses he has in gameplay. Don't get me wrong, he's far from being bad or anything. He's another character that is really above average when dealing with big crowds of enemies, but feels really weak when fighting a really strong enemy one-on-one. He's got some great AoE options, especially his Muso, which is one of the best crowd clear moves in the whole game, and the same can be said about a lot of his charge attack. But Ranmaru has some pretty glaring weaknesses. His attacks are really slow. All of his attacks, especially his normal attacks, are very slow. So if you don't have your Musho available, you really don't have many ways of pulling off very long combos. And his normal attacks have Ranmaru really plant his feet to the ground and not move forward much with each swing, giving him a shorter reach than what you might expect considering he wields this big ass katana. So generally speaking, Ranmaru is a slow heavy with a wide reach and good AoE crowd clear, but limited ability to deal with strong officers. But let's talk about some specific features. In Samurai Warriors 1 and 2, he has a really nice base charge attack. I think he also has it in Samurai Warriors 3, but I can't be bothered playing that game to check. But basically it's a ranged AoE horizontal shockwave attack that you can charge up for longer to increase its power and range. It breaks guard and stuns enemies or deals damage and knocks them away if they're not guarding. In Samurai Warriors 1, it's a very nice move to have, a strong opener / hurt finner, but it isn't super OP because it doesn't doesn't build up your Muso bar at all. In Samurai Warriors 2, it is OP, really OP, because it does build up your Muso bar. So if I have a lot of enemy officers to deal with and melee combat seems a bit unviable, I just spam the shit out of this move in Samurai Warriors 2. In Samurai Warriors 2, he's mostly unchanged from Samurai Warriors 1, apart from the introduction of special attacks, but his special attacks are just okay. One is a really rapid dashing slice attack. It's good at interrupting enemies mid-combo and getting you out of some dangerous situations, but you can't combo off of it, just a one-off hit, and it doesn't deal a whole lot of damage. And it's pretty small reach. So it's far from being OP, but it's a nice option to have for dealing with hyper and super hyper officers. His other special attack is just increases attack but decreases defense. I never really use it because it could lead to you dying really quick on accident, especially on the harder difficulties. Overall, in Samurai Warriors 1 and 2, I'd probably rank Ranmaru an A- in gameplay because he's exceptionally good at dealing with big crowds of enemies, but I really struggle to quickly take down enemy officers with him because of how slow his attacks are. In Samurai Warriors 4, Ranmaru is a lot more in the middle. He no longer really stands out as a strong crowd clear character because, well, every character is in Samurai Warriors 4. Also, there's hyper attacks now, so he no longer has his range shockwave attack, and his special attack is the increases attack but decreases defense one. Basically, he has no strong cheese move or opener anymore. I mean, his special move is a bit better now because you can easily turn it on just as you activate either a Muso attack, Spirit Rage, or any of the other generous invulnerability windows that the game gives you. So you can basically use it with no risk, but to be honest, I can't see a huge difference in the damage. He's solid in Samurai Warriors 4, but he hasn't got anything that really stands out. So I'd probably give him like a B+ in Samurai Warriors 4. So overall, I'm gonna give Ranmaru a gameplay score of A-. So let's talk about Ranmaru's story and characterization. Ranmaru played a pretty prominent role in Samurai Warriors 1. He starts as Mitsuhide's protege in the Mino clan, but right away he's fascinated and infatuated with Nobunaga, so he decides to prove his value to Nobunaga by killing hundreds of his men in his army. I mean, sure, that's one way to do it, certainly leaves a big impression. His story starts going down the same path as Mitsuhide, but as Nobunaga carries out ruthless slayings of civilian rebels, Mitsuhide isn't so keen on him anymore, whereas Ranmaru is pretty much unshaken and stays loyal to Nobunaga. There's a branching path in Ranmaru's story, one where he fails to save Nobunaga at Hinoji but lives to fight another day himself. And in this route he gets a hollow vengeance against Mitsuhide, which really only serves to leave him even more alone. The other branch features him rescuing Nobunaga from Hinoji and then slaying Mitsuhide in the next battle. It's yet again a downer because him and Mitsuhide were friends. But anyway, this path leads to Ranmaru stopping yet another assassination attempt on Nobunaga, but this time Ranmaru starts to have his doubts and refuses to keep playing a submissive role where he kisses the ground that Nobunaga walks on. He questions if Nobunaga's even worth saving, and he actually demands Nobunaga to be better and to get his shit together to justify all the lives that Ranmaru has to take to save him. I thought that this was a cool little bit of characterization and made me more endeared to Ranmaru, and it was pleasantly surprising to go back and experience this little storyline because I, like most of the fan base, had this perception of Ranmaru where he basically doesn't have much of a role in the story other than just doing the same stuff that Nobunaga does and being there with him. But in this game, Ranmaru is very much his own character, which I think is kinda largely being forgotten by most of the fan base. But to be honest, this is sadly all that there is to talk about in terms of story and characterization for Ranmaru, because in Samurai Warriors 2 they pretty much skip all the very early parts of the story, and they also just don't have a story mode for Ranmaru Mori in Samurai Warriors 2. So all you get to see of Ranmaru in Samurai Warriors 2 is mostly just him silently staying by Nobunaga's side, usually bowing his head and just doing what he's told. It's a shame really, but they do at least give some unique dialogue and missions and interactions for free mode stages when you play as Ranmaru. In Samurai Warriors 3 base game, Ranmaru yet again didn't have a story mode. Now, they do have a story mode for Ranmaru Mori in Samurai Warriors 3 Z or Samurai Warriors 3 Extreme Legends, but that's Japanese only, so I'm not really gonna talk about it. And in Samurai Warriors 4, Ranmaru is like barely existent in the game story. Yet again, he's just a silent and subservient figure standing next to Nobunaga Oda and not really having his own agency. So it's kinda interesting that in the first game in the series, Ranmaru is quite a prominent and important character, but never so again. And he may never be a prominent character in Samurai Warriors again because he's not a character in Samurai Warriors 5, surprisingly. And if he's not in Samurai Warriors 5, then there's a good chance he won't be in future games either. In the end, I'm gonna give Ranmaru's story a B+. In Samurai Warriors 1, I like him quite a bit and found his story arc pretty compelling actually. But then in every other Samurai Warriors game, Ranmaru is a background figure, an extension of Nobunaga Oda, and not really his own person. So I'm probably being a bit generous giving him a B+, to be honest. But the one time his story was prominent, I really liked it. And at least in all the games where he isn't a very important character, he's never annoying or obnoxious. So anyway, this is farewell to Ranmaru. Like I said before, he's not reappearing in Samurai Warriors 5. And that really hurts for me, because Ranmaru is one of my favorite characters in the series. And this game is probably the only game in the new story timeline that Ranmaru could appear. I do think it's possible we'll get Ranmaru as a character for Samurai Warriors 5 as DLC or something, which kind of annoys me, but you know, there's a good chance I might buy it because I could see Ranmaru looking really cool in the new anime ink paint art style. But anyway, Ranmaru was a man of few words, so I'll stop going on about him and wrap up his final score. In gameplay and power level, he gets a A- rating. In story and characterization, he gets a B+, and in design/cool factor, he gets an S, leaving him with a final rating of A. Alright, on to our next character. It's Muneshige Tachibana.
Are you afraid of death?
Not I. I will be proud to die for the Tachibana.
Use your head. Death is no prize. Stay alive. I will not die.
Yes, you will. You have always been one step ahead of me.
I don't know. I've always just outdone you.
Farewell.
Indeed.
Muneshige made his debut in Samurai Warriors 3, and he was introduced in kind of a bad way. His wife Ginchio now had her entire story mode revolve around him, so Muneshige got off on the wrong foot right away. But is his character redeemable after that bad introduction? Well, let's see. Well, to be honest, since I skipped Samurai Warriors 3 when it came out, I didn't know anything about this character until I played Warriors Archie-free, and to be honest, I didn't even really pay attention to the story and characters that much in that game, so I don't even think I knew that he was Ginchio's husband. I saw that his last name was Tachibana, of course, but he could have been her brother or father or anything as far as I knew. Anyway, let's talk about his story first. To be honest, Muneshige has always come across to me as the other and much lamer Tachibana playable character. Let's start with Samurai Warriors 3, which I've actually played a bit of now to play his story, since this is the first time he was introduced to the series. It only seemed fitting that I go back and play this god-awful game. The story starts off with him doing all the same stuff as Ginchio, except now he's the one that is really invested in this whole revenge plot with Yoshihiro Shimazu, although you're probably gonna find it hard to feel the emotion he's feeling given his hilariously flat wooden English voice actor. Anyway, he does battle with and defeats the Shimazu thanks to the help of the Toyotomi, but it's an unsatisfying victory for him, because instead of getting to kill the Shimazu, the Tachibana are instead forced to serve alongside them while Hideyoshi conquers the rest of Japan. Then after Hideyoshi's death, the whole west-east split happens, and Muneshige and Yoshihiro continue to fight alongside each other as they both side with the Western army. Eventually they grow a mutual respect for each other's strength, and Thus, Muneshige decides to put aside the revenge he once sought, and this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, that's because it's almost exactly the same story as Ginchiho's story mode from Samurai Warriors 2. But this time they literally sent Ginchiho away so that the rivalry/friendship is now about and between Muneshige and Yoshihiro instead of her. And I mean, seriously, could they have not come up with some more original content for Muneshige? And on top of the unoriginality, it just feels worse here, because Muneshige is, in my opinion, one of the most unlikable characters in the cast. Where do I even begin to explain that? Well, for one, he treats my samurai queen, Kenshin Tachibana, like, really badly. He takes her for granted, he flirts with other women. I mean, how could you do that when you got Ginchiho with her? Also, without really doing much to earn it, he just declares himself to be the strongest man in Japan, and I'm sorry, but I don't really buy it, and I get even more annoyed by it when other characters, even Tadakatsu Honda, acknowledge that he's like the strongest guy. He just doesn't look or sound the part. Also, his English voice actor in Samurai Warriors 3 is just awful. His voiceover performance in Samurai Warriors 3 is just really unexpressive and flat. And then to top it all off, Muneshige's ending is literally him riding off into the sunset after winning the war, and he literally just leaves all his responsibilities with Ginchiho, who doesn't want them. Seriously, fuck this guy. In Samurai Warriors 4, he barely exists. He barely gets any screen time at all, and like, thank God, because after Samurai Warriors 3, anytime he's on the screen, I just want to punch his stupid pretty face. So he gets a D in terms of story and characterization. No, you know what? Fuck that. He gets a D minus. D isn't even low enough for him, so I'm giving him a D minus. He gets an F. He gets an F. He just fails in story and characterization. Fuck him. Anyway, let's talk about how Muneshige plays, I guess. Judging characters in terms of gameplay in Samurai Warriors 3 is a bit hard for me because I have very little experience with this game. Also, I'm running the game with Dolphin Emulator, and I'm not sure my PC is quite cut out to emulate Wii games. Or maybe it's a ROM/emulation specific thing, but either way, this game runs kind of like shit on my PC. It's barely managing to hold 30 frames per second most of the time, and there's a lot of slowdown. And I'm pretty sure a lot of that, and I'm pretty sure it's worse emulating off my PC than it would be running off an actual Nintendo Wii, but I don't know for sure. So you have to take my evaluations with a pretty big pinch of salt, because all of the characters' gameplay mechanics are going to feel worse in Samurai Warriors 3 for me because of how badly the game is running. But anyway, Muneshige is basically a pretty alright, pretty average character. He's a normal focused character, but unfortunately because all of his attacks seem to end with him knocking the opponent away, it's not very easy to consistently pull off really long combos like you should be able to. I've been experimenting with using Spirit Dash to achieve some longer combos, but this is pretty unreliable, and it costs meter. Many of his charge attacks are pretty decent crowd clearing options, but he's pretty mediocre when it comes to dealing with strong officers. Your base charge move is a slow melee guard break, but it also knocks enemies away so you can't combo off of it. It's pretty much useless. His Muso can be a pretty decent crowd clear ability, but it's a bit awkward with its animation and swing timing, so I tend to just activate Muso and then use regular combo moves instead. He only gets the one special move in Samurai Warriors 3, and it's to empower your block ability, which does make sense since he wields a sword and a shield, but it's also pretty much useless. Like, it does something, don't get me wrong, but you don't want to be sitting around blocking and guarding in these games. I like the idea, but I feel like it needs to be reworked to be useful. Maybe he should have been given something like Musashi's counter move from Samurai Warriors 2 instead. If I were to rank his gameplay score in Samurai Warriors 3, I'd probably give him like a B-. He's not bad, but he's just a little bit below average. He feels a bit better in Samurai Warriors 4, but still, he feels like a middle of the pack character in that game. He's got the same special move, which has its uses, I guess, but doesn't really feel intuitive to use in these games. He can pull off longer combos, but he just doesn't have anything special to push him ahead of other characters in the game. He hasn't got a strong opener or OP cheese move. He's got a pretty weak, average special move. So I'm just gonna give Muneshige a B in gameplay in Samurai Warriors 4. And so overall I'm gonna give Muneshige a gameplay score of B-. Muneshige in Samurai Warriors 3 and Samurai Warriors 4 looks pretty cool, I guess. The long hair, the pretty face, the cool looking armor and sword and shield. It's all pretty decent, but a pretty unremarkable design, and it barely changes from Samurai Warriors 3 to 4, and I have very little to say about it. To be honest, I think I'm a bit biased against him, because I think he's such an unlikable douchebag. I kind of think he looks like an unlikable douchebag, even though if this design was attached to a character I actually liked, I might rank it higher. So I'm just gonna give him a B in design, call it a day. So let's tally up his final score, because I don't want to talk about Muneshige anymore. He gets a B- in gameplay, he gets our first F in story and characterization, and he gets a B in design and cool factor. Now, technically, using the same math I have for the other characters, he should just barely scrape by with a C rating, but I'm gonna add a little bit of personal bias to the final score and give him a D. Muneshige is my least favorite character in the whole cast, so fuck him, he gets a D. Sorry if you guys like him, nothing against you. If you are one of the brave few that have made it this far, all the way to the end of the video, thank you very much. Please click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see more content. This is Game Ranker, peace out. By the way, sorry this video took so long to get out. Personal life issues, and big shout out to my friend Ryan Khan in the comments section, who left a little message checking how I was going that inspired me to get back to work, so thanks for that.